cloud. There we go. All right. Well, first of all, I want to welcome everyone. Thank you so much for attending our event here, Bringing Science to Society. We have a really great lineup for you guys. First of all, is the screen sharing all right? Excellent. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. We have with us today the Honorable Dr. Rush Holt, CEO Emeritus of AAAS and a former member of the House of Representatives. We have Elizabeth Good Christopherson, the President and CEO of the Rita Allen Foundation, as well as Jamie Vernon, the Executive Director and CEO of Sigma Xi, the Research Honor Society. So before we jump into our panel, I know we may have some folks here on the panel who may not be familiar with Journal of Science Policy and Governance. Maybe someone, a friend or a colleague sent this link to you. So I'm going to just really briefly tell you a little bit about who we are. So first of all, let me briefly introduce myself here. My name is Hannah Fry. I am the Director of Programs and Events for the Journal of Science Policy and Governance. Really glad to have you guys here and to really be happy that we're able to put on this event for you all. A little bit about the Journal of Science and Policy and Governance, or JSPG. Our mission is really to catalyze the engagement of students and early career researchers, people who are making transitions in their careers into science communication, science policy, and governance, to really put forward their ideas on policy research and writing, and be a place for people to share their ideas in science policy and governance. We are an internationally recognized, open access, peer-reviewed research publication. But we're a little more than that. We have a lot more going for us as well. We really are trying to be that vehicle for students and early career scholars, so that way they can publish their articles, as well as bolster their own research and writing credentials in science and technology policy. And so we want to make sure that we're encouraging all of our students, our scholars, to engage and contribute in policymaking. And this is going to be at all levels of government. We do programming on the state level, the federal level, the international level, and also the local community level. Move the slide. There we go. We also have webinars, writing workshops similar to this. We have the career development panels and webinars. Our editorial board is often looking for people to contribute. We have an ambassador program for people who are early career and maybe just want to, step their toes into the work that JSPG is doing. We work a lot with partner organizations, such as what we have on here that I'll get into a little bit with the Rita Allen Foundation and Sigma Xi. We work with conferences, hosting panels to make sure that we can get the word out about the work that we're doing and making sure we're engaging with the media on that. So I want to talk a little bit about the civic science issue that came out in March. We partnered with Sigma Xi and Rita Allen Foundation on this issue, and it was on civic science for transformative policy solutions to societal changes. So we'll be talking a little bit about this on the call, but I want to first of all just introduce Sigma Xi here and the Rita Allen Foundation. Sigma Xi is a scientific research honor society. It's one of the oldest and largest scientific organizations in the world, and also works to not only be a place to honor really excellent science and scientists, but also to look at how we can promote the public's understanding of science through outreach, training in civic science, incorporating science and policy development process, promoting dialogues on ethics in science. And I'm sure Jamie can talk a little bit more about this in the discussion. They also published the award-winning magazine, American Scientist. Highly recommend that you guys check out that publication as well. The Rita Allen Foundation is an organization that invests in transformative ideas at their very earliest stages of development to try and leverage that growth and promote breakthrough solutions and significant problems. So they're really trying to invest in especially early career biomedical scholars that are doing pioneering research, trying to seed those innovative approaches to civic engagement, as well as developing knowledge and networks to build the effectiveness of the philanthropic sector. Kind of a plug here that I'm sure Elizabeth can talk a little bit more here. In 2020, the foundation launched the Civic Science Fellows Program in partnership with the science, media, academic, civic, and philanthropic organizations to really try to support that early career leadership and broadening the benefits of scientific progress. So, we are really, really thankful to Rita Allen Foundation and Sigma Xi for coming together with the JSPG for this issue, where we're able to publish 7 articles where the authors in the issue were able to highlight novel funding mechanisms to increase community engagement, support for evidence synthesis and access to preprints, ways to utilize cross-department structures to facilitate transdisciplinary stewardship models, offer some blueprints for relational infrastructure to grow community engagement, the need to increase diversity in our congressional staffers in the U.S., and also how to fund, how we can better word our funding announcements to encourage deeper connections to local communities. So if you haven't had a chance to check out the issue, I highly recommend that folks take a look at it on our website. And then moving on to our panelists, I want to introduce these great panels that we have here for you. So we have Elizabeth Christopherson here with us today. She's the president and CEO of the Rita Allen Foundation. She's currently leading the foundation through a period of really rapid expansion of developing some new initiatives, some coalitions that I'm sure she'll be able to talk a lot about here in the discussion, but really trying to advance this culture of civic science. And before joining Rita Allen, she was the first female executive of New Jersey's Public Broadcasting Network, NJN, which through her leadership earned national awards for digital innovation, program excellence, financial support, and strong public-private sector collaborations. She's a recipient of 5 honorary degrees and numerous awards of public service, including the Women Who Make a Difference Award from the International Women's Forum. She served as a jury member and chair for international competitions, including the NHK's Japan Prize and the MacArthur Foundation's 100 and Change Initiative, and as overall just a really respected advocate for improving how the social sector listens to and interacts with communities. So I'm really thankful to welcome Elizabeth here to the discussion. And also we have with us Jamie Vernon, who is the executive director and CEO of Sigma Xi, as well as the publisher of American Scientist. As a Sigma Xi member, Dr. Vernon has been on the Society's staff since 2014 and the Director of Science Communications and Publications, as well as Editor-in-Chief of American Scientist. And Jamie also served as the Interim Co-Director of Operations of Sigma Xi between 2014 and 2015. Before Sigma Xi, he was an Oak Ridge Institute for Science and Education Fellow and a AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellow in the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy of the Department of Energy. In this role, he designed and implemented evaluation programs to measure and communicate the impacts of renewable energy technologies. And he's also co-founded some small business global energy challenge incubators and co-chaired the digital media team of the interagency communication and education team of the U.S. Global Change Research Program, working with the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy on coordinating communications among federal agencies for climate research. He earned his bachelor's in zoology at North Carolina State University and his master's in molecular biology and biotechnology at East Carolina University. And he got his Ph.D. in cell and molecular biology at the University of Texas at Austin. And then we also have with us here special guest, Dr. Rush Holt. He served as both not just both, but as an educator, scientist, administrator, and policymaker. After earning his PhD in physics from the New York University and serving on the faculty of Swarthmore College, where he taught courses in both physics and public policy before becoming the assistant director of the Princeton Plasma Physics Laboratory. In 1982, he took leave from his faculty position to become a AAAS American Physical Society Science and Technology Policy Fellow on Capitol Hill, which he is credited with really laying the groundwork for his desire to run for the U.S. House of Representatives, where in 1999, he represented New Jersey's 12th conditional district for 16 years. He served as only one of 3 research physicists in Congress. I'm not sure if that stat is how up to date that is, but I've been trying to look for it. We need like better trackers of like who all of our scientists that have been in Congress. But he served on the Committee of Natural Resources, the Committee on Education and Labor, the Committee on Budget, and the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, and chaired the Select Intelligence Oversight Panel. Following his retirement from Congress in 2015, Rush was CEO of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, or AAAS, until his retirement in 2019. And I also would like to point out to folks here, he is a 5-time winner on Jeopardy and also defeated IBM's Watson in the game. So I am going to end my slide share here, and I'm going to welcome our panelists here to a great discussion. So, I think first of all, I want to ask folks, we have a lot of early career people who are on this call here. And I wanted to open with asking all of you if you could tell us a little bit about your backgrounds. I just gave the bios, but, I think it would be really great to hear from you all kind of how your backgrounds led you to the roles that you've had in your career and where you are today. And I will let you guys decide who goes first, but feel free to jump in.
I think a 5-time Jeopardy winner should go first.
I should say I'm no more special than the other, my other friends, longtime friends, Jamie and Elizabeth. But I'm delighted to be here, and I really admire them, and they've been good friends for quite a long time. And I really respect JSPG. Thanks for doing this, but more, thanks for providing young scientists the entree that you do. I think that's really important. So I, from my earliest memories, I've been interested in how the world works, that's science, and how people get along, that's politics. I never saw any inconsistency between those two. My mother, who had been a zoology professor, was also Secretary of State of our state. So I thought these things naturally went together. I do find a lot of my scientist friends and a lot of my political friends think they are incompatible, but that is not true in my mind. I also, by the way, wanted to say a word about Sigma Psi. It has a soft spot in my heart because when I joined the faculty at Swarthmore, there was this wonderful woman who was in the biology department, who was also chair of the Division of Natural Sciences and president of Sigma Psi. We later married. But when I was inducted into Sigma Psi, she signed the certificate. And so that's, so it does have a soft spot for me. When I had been in Congress for a short while, bumper stickers started appearing in central New Jersey saying, my congressman is a rocket scientist. Not strictly true, but yes, I'm a Ph.D. Physicist. And my constituents seemed to think that it was important to have scientists in Congress, that there wasn't enough science or science wasn't getting its due in policymaking. I really think that's true. And much of my career has been to try to find a way to embed science in our society in a way that it is really used, that it's embraced by all Americans, not just scientists. And that's really what I've been about in the various things that I've done.
Elizabeth or Jamie?
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, it's hard to follow Dr. Holt, Rush, who, yeah, thank you. It's for your comments, and I really have enjoyed working with you, especially when you were at AAAS and when I was a AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellow, just understanding that you were one who came from that program as well. It was a role model for us all in policy. But I'll just say, as a kid, I was an oddball. I didn't know anyone who was interested in science, really. No one in my family had gone to college, so I'm one of those first generation scientists. So really unusual character, and very curious, exploring the universe around me, willing to go dig in the forest and look for animals and all of that, which led to me becoming a zoology major at NC State. And fast forward 10 or 15 years later, and I'm working on evolution and development research and understanding the importance of science to solving societal challenges. And one of the areas I thought I might see myself doing research in was embryonic stem cell research. How do we use stem cells to cure diseases? And in 2000 or 2001, I believe, George Bush, the president, put in an executive order stating that there could be no new stem cell lines generated. And suddenly I realized the intersection of government and policy, and how policy can limit the reach of science. And so I began as a graduate student to explore, well, what research do I want to pursue, and how is it potentially affected or influenced or even advanced by policy, let alone being set back? And so I was actually working in a field of genetic engineering, developing tools that were very similar to CRISPR technology today, and knowing that policy was a potential factor in how that research was going to be conducted, where it was going to be conducted, and who was going to be conducting it. And so that drew me towards science policy and that intersection. I also happened to be in Texas, where one of the largest book purchasers in the country, and so we knew as graduate students and educators that Texas had a huge influence on what textbooks were going to be used across the country. And there were tremendous debates going on about what content was allowed in those textbooks. There were challenges to the teaching of evolution and this requirement of teaching both sides of the issue, as well as even questioning the age of the universe. So that drew me in, and I actually was the first time I engaged in policy was providing my testimony at a hearing for the Texas Board of Education, arguing on behalf of education and the age of the universe, which who would have thought we would have to question those things in the 21st century? But I did, and that really established my interest and my desire to have more influence there. I introduced to AAAS's Science and Technology Policy Fellowship while I was in graduate school, and I viewed that as a potential path to policy, something I had a passion about. But I was also writing about policy at the time, and those two interests and the effort I was putting into writing about policy drew me into the community, and ultimately I became a AAAS Policy Fellow. After completing my fellowship, I stayed on as an ORISE fellow because I had such an incredible experience, and I had access to people like Rush and Congress people and Stephen Chu, who was the head of the Department of Energy. And it was really exciting to be in those conversations, and then providing some time at the White House to develop communication strategies around climate change. These things were conscious decisions that I made so that I could become more involved in these decisions that were impacting humanity. And so, my experiences there led me to Sigma Xi. American Scientist is a great publication. I was thrilled to be invited to or hired to be the editor-in-chief of that magazine, and then saw the opportunity to influence an organization like Sigma Xi after my broad background of research and policy was evident, and that led to me obtaining the position of executive director. And now I'm able to work with people like Elizabeth and think about how we can achieve these tremendous goals in civic science. So that's a little bit of my background, and happy to talk more.
Well, Jamie, I'm really glad that you're happy to talk more, and you too, Rush, and just with much admiration for the work that you both advance and lead and inspire us with too. And Hannah, your energy and those of JSPG colleagues want to thank you so much for the opportunity of even creating this space. I know we talked about bringing the voices of the authors who actually wrote and thought about these articles, and we're so deeply proud of those authors, some of whom are here today, and hope we'll hear a little bit more from them later too. And just want to thank you for the opportunity. I think it's always fascinating to me when we think about careers and whatever stage we're at, reflecting back that certainly in early stages, we often don't think about where we may end up. There are opportunities that sometimes are not evident. There are passions that develop. But one thing that I found that was consistent along the way, for me at least, were values. And I think our values are transportable. And so early on, I grew up in a community with many scientists. I was deeply curious about science, but did not pursue it formally. Rather, I think I was very interested in how we build community, how we build collaborative opportunities, how we work toward a world where we can expand benefits and horizons together in a public interest way. And so that brought me to a couple things that I thought I might just highlight as examples of experiences then have contributed to my current role. And one is with the New Jersey State Council on the Arts, which I knocked on the door of the governor-to-be, really wanting to participate because I was concerned about how grants were being made in the state of New Jersey with public funds. And I had the opportunity then to join a wonderful group of people to then think about how to create what then during a challenging period became a model highlighted by the National Endowment for the Arts in terms of grant making, much like the work that you're doing, UNICEF, for thinking about how creating more equitable grant making too. The second thing with the State Arts Council, and New Jersey is such a wonderful, diverse state. Yes, we're proud that a rocket scientist was our congressman, and among other good things, but it's a wonderfully diverse state that has been my home for many, many years. And we were thinking about strategic planning. I had the opportunity to lead a strategic plan, not just for the agency, but for the state. This was an unusual idea that involved a lot of listening to different communities about their needs. Then again, weaving together what we might do together was a very important framework. What that translated into, and again, I want to say this very modestly because many people contribute to this, but was a really strong advocacy group for the arts in New Jersey, combined with a governor who cared a lot about it and a legislator that responded so that there's now dedicated funds in New Jersey to supporting the arts. And I think that's a tremendously statement, again, with the power of people working together, again, thinking about something that's often marginalized in terms of public sector funds also. Moved on to the running New Jersey's PBS NPR network, again, established to give voice to the people of New Jersey. So again, had an extremely important role in between the number 1 and 4 media markets. Oftentimes, New Jersey's been overlooked in terms of reporting essential information for our state to work. And again, this was a time of tremendous change for the network. It was a time of a need to build bridges, to develop some innovative solutions together. And I'm deeply proud that we're able to develop some prototypes in a state-run network with lots of constraints to do this and to really start thinking about how we could create some international services, not just phenomenal programs. I think there were some tremendous programs that won some good awards, but really to develop some services using digital technology to support literacy, education, homeland security, and more. And so I think those were some examples of trying to work with lean resources, but again, pulling people together in partnership to think about how we can align on goals and do some good work together. So then tapped on the shoulder to, again, pay attention to your networks. They're very important as you develop your careers. There are people who most likely, as they know you, get to know you, will tap you for other opportunities. And that is, of course, a great joy is to be able to respond to them. And so for the Rita Allen Foundation, I entered at a time that they just had an infusion of new funds. They had been supporting really wonderful early career biomedical scientists, and again, wanted to listen to these scientists. What did they need? What was changing in their environment? And of course, the challenges of funding, the challenges of being able to communicate their work, the challenges of people really understanding the importance of a long time that it may take to do some basic biomedical research. All of these things we learned a lot about. But building a very special team, developing some great partnerships, we started to invest in not only civic engagement and again communication and so forth, but coming together with a small group of funders thinking about civic science and developing this program again that is investing not only in early career emerging phenomenal leaders, and some of whom are here today. I'm so proud to know them and to know their work, but also the host institutions. We wanted to be able to engage with them and have the funders all come together to sort of learn and accelerate our learning, to seed new ideas, new relationships, and to hopefully continue along the way to accelerate and advance systemic change. So it's been a great joy to work with many, many talented people. And again, a privilege to have this career path. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And so the three of you all have some very different roles or held some very unique roles, but all of them have been really centered on this idea that scientists can play an important role in their communities and society more broadly. And so I just wanted to dive into that individually for each of you for a moment. So Rush, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the role that scientists can play both in the national policy discussions, whether in Congress or in large scientific societies like AAAS, but also in that kind of local community role as well.
I will try to talk a little bit. I could talk a lot about that.
It's an open-ended question for a reason.
And I also, by the way, want to say to any of you who pay attention to these things, and you all should, the Rita Allen Foundation under Elizabeth's leadership packs a wallop that is as great as the monstrous foundations, even though Rita Allen is a much smaller foundation. Their beneficial effect is way beyond their bankroll. Anyway, when I assume we're talking today to you, people who are wondering about your role, your personal role at the interface of science and society and science and government, and you're wondering what you can do. I'm happy to talk with you more about that individually if you want. It really is important. It's worth asking yourself, are you interested in science as it affects government decisions, or are you interested in government decisions as they affect science? Those are two different, not unrelated things. But I'm not going to talk about either one of them, really. What I want to do is enlist you as ambassadors for science as an idea, as a frame of mind, as a basis for our self-government. And it is not about your zoology or your oceanography or your molecular biology. It is about using evidence in a way that helps us understand how things are and how they work. Helping to educate people on the idea that science is our best path toward reliable knowledge about things that we don't know about. Most people think that science is this compendium of facts and established truths. It's not that at all, really. It is about what we don't know and giving us a way to approach and live with what we don't know. And so when you think about climate or epidemics or gun safety or vaccinations or tax cuts or toxicology or forensics, there's more that we don't know than we do know. And what we need is a public that understands that there's a way to think about things that we don't know, that we don't have to substitute opinions for evidence, that we don't have to fall back on the dogmas of our tribe, that we don't have to substitute wishful thinking, or we don't have to listen to internet trolls or miscreants, that there really is a path to reliable knowledge about how things work and how they are today, so that we can actually realize our dreams. That's what science is. And the message is each of you can, I would say, must do this. You know, most scientists spend their time asking, okay, now how can I make my message simple and clear about the research that I do? How can I convince people that our line of research needs more funding? How can I talk about myself, in a sense, or my science, in a broader sense? Really, what we need to do is to listen to what the public is anxious about because of their uncertainty about it, and show them that there is this way of thinking that's now been tested for 2 centuries, 3 centuries, that will help them live with this uncertainty and make decisions that are no doubt imperfect, sometimes wrong, but better than playing their hunches, or better than listening to their well-meaning uncle or aunt. And that's what this is about. That's what you can bring to the public sphere. There's so much we could talk about. You can be technical interpreters. You can be the scientist at the table. And in our society nowadays, since so many people say science, oh, that's not for me, I can't do that. Science isn't at the table unless scientists are at the table. So you can be the scientist at the table, or maybe you can find ways to get the science to the table if the scientists aren't there. You can be fact checkers. You can do all these things, but mostly I want you to be a diplomat for science, for the idea that asking questions so that they can be answered empirically and verifiably is the best route to understanding of what we don't know. The best route to understanding how things are and how they work, so that our government can function.
And that is quite the call to action.
Let me just say, at tonight's debate, I'm sure we will hear an awful lot that is not based on evidence. And most of the public won't even care that it's not based on evidence. We've got to convince people that evidence-based thinking using scientific methods, I hate to use that because it's a fuzzy kind of thing. There isn't this checklist of scientific methods, but based on the scientific approach is essential if we're going to have a viable future. And so when people like Neil Lane 3 decades ago started using the term civic science, I think that's what he was talking about. When Frank von Hippel wrote a book about his development as a civic scientist, he was talking about arms control in particular, controlling nuclear weapons and that sort of thing. I think that's what he was talking about. Not quite as explicitly as I'm talking about it. But anyway, as I say, I could go on longer than you want. So, but anyway, that's my point.
But no, I think that is a call to action we can all take to heart.
Yes.
And, Elizabeth, I wanted to also kind of ask you a little bit about the role that you see that philanthropic organizations can play in helping to foster this civic engagement as part of the scientific process. If we're going to build these civic scientists, like, we need a team of people to help make sure that they have the resources to do that. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the role that philanthropic organizations can play.
Love to, and thank you. This is a very generous and wonderful panel. So thank you, Rush and Hannah and Jamie too, for all what you're doing. All of us who have worked with philanthropic organizations know that there are many different approaches and ways that people are engaging and doing this work. Oftentimes thinking of philanthropic money as seed money, as risk capital to allow people to do some innovation too. But one of the things that I might call upon is that as we were exploring how we could better build relationships among communities and so forth, did a chapter for the Oxford Handbook of the Science of Science Communication, again, thinking about the evidence-based approaches, as well as our lived experiences, the practitioners too. The National Academy has consensus report has seen a disconnect between some of the evidence-based work, research, and the people who are trying to better engage and work with different communities too. But in that Oxford Handbook, we did not only some literature review and also interviewing of philanthropic partners to really think about the change and the dynamics of science toward a culture of engagement. And we identified sort of 3 ways that we thought that philanthropy could particularly make a outsized impact. And one is by mapping the landscape of contributions. So again, beginning with where what others are doing and having that knowledge to do. 2, convening people across disciplines to create a more coordinated research agenda and to support coordinated action. And again, this is again what we're talking about and feeling in a variety of different ways. And strengthening the dialogue, the feedback loops, and the experimentation. And I particularly want to say that some people like Andrea Lopez, I see you're here today. I don't know if it's okay to quickly turn off your mic, but come in and join us on the mic. But I know that we talk about change happens at the speed of trust, meaning that the importance that we often don't understand is about building relationships. So Andrea, could you just quickly mention what you're working on to kind of help build that sense of connectivity?
Sure, I'm happy to chat for a quick second. Thanks for the invitation. I am a 2021 cohort civic science fellow with Ciencia Puerto Rico. So during my fellowship, I worked on a lot of different things, mainly in the science communication and public engagement area. And some of the activities I did were developing training materials for science communicators, evaluating the organization's communication efforts, and also developing public health campaigns in Puerto Rico. And through all of these efforts, I was able to engage with and collaborate with a lot of the different communities that Ciencia Puerto Rico works with. And a lot of these communities have been historically marginalized and underserved in the archipelago. And our goal is really to find a way to give them the tools and to co-create community science projects with them. But also at the end of the day, we just want to be sure that their voices are heard and that we are, honoring their insights and their perspectives through these processes. And as part of this work, it really does require more time than we usually think. It relies on building relationships, building trust. We might find that we need to change our goals or change our budget, or timelines might need to shift. And we also need to be very aware that through our public engagement efforts, we might be working to undo years and years of harm that these communities have experienced. So I published an opinion piece in this civic science issue where I wanted to share some of our experiences working with the community partners in Puerto Rico and some of the limitations that we have faced, mainly that many grants have, short timelines, burdensome requirements, and are more focused on quantitative outcomes. And this doesn't really line up with how this type of work is done, how it really happens. So for this opinion piece, we wanted to ask funders and grant makers to shift their funding models and, practice more flexible and longer term funding. Not only because it would be beneficial to our projects, but it just overall helps advance the broader goals of civic science, like making sure that we are finding the best ways to welcome diverse voices to the scientific enterprise. So this issue just felt like a really great place to share our experiences and share this call to action.
Which is wonderful. And so Andrea spoke to the philanthropic community too. So did UNICEF do that in terms of practice. And if you'll all allow me just, again, very briefly, UNICEF to explain how, again, we're trying to seed change within the philanthropic community. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for the opportunity. So very briefly, just to share, my work with the fellowship was basically to pilot a set of recommendations among 11 foundations, so they can test things they can change, like these more flexible funding mechanisms, or creating different supports for researchers to engage with society or other actors. And we piloted these recommendations in funding programs. And again, similar to Andrea, we were like very excited to hear the lessons the funders in the philanthropic sphere was sharing in an internal cohort that we put together. And we saw the opportunity in this issue to share those lessons, basically just to create a tool for other philanthropic organizations to wire or to work around when they were reimagining the things they can do to foster more engaged science, or to be more intentional to engage with different kind of actors in the scientific sphere. That was our experience, and this issue was very timely and the perfect outlet for us to share. And thank you for the opportunity to share a bit more about it.
Absolutely. And I think this is a great time to highlight for our audience here to make sure you're keeping an eye on announcements coming up in the next few weeks and months, as we are looking to highlight authors from both the civic science issue as well as some other issues that JSPG has coming out. So keep an eye out, and we'll be having some of these events coming up soon. All right. And then Jamie, I'd also wanted to turn it over to you to touch and see if you could touch a little bit on the work that Sigma Psi does, both on, making sure that we can honor scientific excellence, but how can we bridge that with the societal impact? And, I think what many people think of Sigma Psi, they're thinking the honor society, but it's so much more than that. I was wondering if you could talk about that.
Of course, yeah. And the first thing I'll say is that Sigma Xi could do nothing without partners. We rely on a community of scientists, both as individual scientists, but also the scientific ecosystem that includes organizations like Rita Allen Foundation and JSPG. And when Rush was at AAAS, we even partnered, Sigma Xi and AAAS partnered to advance our mutually shared goals and interests, as well as identifying researchers out there who exemplified the values that Sigma Xi espouses. And I think that the leading way that Sigma Xi as an organization can truly have societal impact is to really focus in on what is at the heart of our organization, and that's ethics and integrity. And to harken back to what Rush was saying in his comments in this section of the conversation, to be an ambassador, you have to have the trust of the people. And if you're going to speak on behalf of science, then you have to have lived the values that represent excellence. And today, I guess that question is evolving, or that definition is evolving. What is excellence in the 21st century? I think Andrea said that a lot of the civic science efforts that are currently underway, particularly with regard to traditionally marginalized communities, is about correcting some of the failures of the scientific community and bringing people into this enterprise so that everyone benefits. And Sigma Xi is now exploring through our conference, the International Forum on Research Excellence, this definition of excellence. And I think it really gets to three questions. How is the research being conducted? So for me, that means with ethics and integrity, we have issues of reproducibility problems. We have issues of plagiarism. We have now issues of AI integrating into publications and falsifying data. Who is conducting the research? So is it inclusive? Are we, I think historically we've been an exclusive enterprise, and we need to open the doors and be more proactive in including every demographic. And then who is benefiting from the science? And that's where the societal impact piece comes in. And when you look at this special issue that we've published, a lot of the articles about doing several of those things, making the science open to the public so they can get access to it, read it, learn what science is providing, what we're learning, and how to use that. And then also making the conditions within the research enterprise welcoming and inclusive for all people to participate. And then how are we providing the funding? Who is being funded? If there is discrimination, whether it's intentional or unintentional, how are we going to correct the grants that are being distributed to researchers? And how are we thinking about where those grants go to have the greatest impact on society? And Sigma Xi is having these conversations. And we then, as an honor society, one of the key ways that we achieve this is by recognizing exemplars of those values. And so our awards are designed to recognize the people who live those values. And so we, our McGovern Award is about individuals who are able to translate research for the public so that it is usable and valuable to them. We have our Gold Key Award, which represents the greatest in science, but also is people who have gone beyond that to make science more relevant to the public. And so Sigma Xi's role as an honor society is honoring the examples that we want to see in science. And for the future, I think broadening the definition of excellence. It's not about how big was your most recent grant, how many papers have you published? It's about what is the impact of that on society. And I think that's the major role that Sigma Xi can play. And, I was happy to hear Rush mention Neil Lane, a past president of Sigma Xi, who really understood civic science well in advance of all of us who are now just catching up. And so I think that speaks to the history of this organization. And my goal and what I'm trying to do is to make sure that we're living that in the 21st century.
Thank you so much. And I want to make sure we have time to go over to audience questions, but I have one more question that I'm going to ask before we turn it over. So, this special issue, this is for Elizabeth and Jamie. The special issue is really focused on civic science for transformative policy solutions to societal challenges. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit. I know we've been talking a lot about civic science, but I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about some of the wide-ranging activities, the approaches, and the ideas that are encompassed within this idea of civic science. And, can you talk a little bit about how your organizations engage in this work? And, I'm going to have to ask you to be brief because I do really want us to get to audience questions, but still, I want to make sure we hear from you guys on this.
Jamie, go ahead, and I'll follow up. So
I think I got a little ahead of myself in my last response by touching on some of the articles that are in this special issue, and those specifically address how funding is distributed, how to build community relationships between scientists and their communities. And I think that really is a key feature of this particular issue, is this focus on having science be a two-way street, that scientists are not just acting independently and thinking about what their next big idea is, but who are we serving? And are there individuals and organizations out there who have questions that science can answer that are being left unanswered? And so I think that's a really important piece of this particular special issue. And so to keep it short, I'll leave it there, and I'll encourage folks to look at those articles. But I think that there's a lot of great recommendations here about how we design science as we go forward.
Absolutely. And I'm going to pick up on that, Jamie, because I think we're often talk about the very human aspect of creating science, which is who informs the research agenda, who participates in developing this research, who benefits from this is ultimately also decided by who decides. And that's often where the policy comes in as well, too. I'm also going to just very quickly, you can tell I'm about amplifying others. It's so wonderful to ask Claire to just quickly tell what her aspiration is for this. And she is had been funded by the Dana Foundation, really at an important part of all this, which is as scientific progress continues, there are ethical decisions that need to be made beyond just those who are developing this progress. So Claire, could you briefly just add your aspiration? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Elizabeth. Yeah, I guess reflecting toward the end of my fellowship, I was also in the second cohort. I kind of came up with this aspiration for where I feel like the ultimate goal of this civic science work lies, which, you know, I would articulate as having science woven into the fabric of our collective decision making, and conversely, the priorities and values of our communities woven into the way we do science. And echoing what Jamie said about it being a two-way street, that I think both sides of that are really critical.
And neuroscience, Claire, thank you so much. Good.
All right, perfect. So I'm going to turn it over to audience questions here. We want to be respectful of people's time to end at 12:30. But if folks have questions that they want to ask our panelists, please raise your hand and we would love to get to you. Don't be shy. I have backup questions, but would love to hear from you all. Yes, Remya.
Thank you. Thank you to the panel and thank you to the organizers. Wonderful session. I just wanted to ask to all three of you and maybe even you, Hannah. So now that you are somewhat established in what you do and you kind of sort of know you've, fought the wars and everything, but like looking back to your younger self, what do you think were the biggest challenges when you started doing this work? Some of you have like a science background, technical background, you have your PhDs. The world of academia, although as Dr. Rush said, like it's not very different, but it can be different. Like there are times when we are in seminars and evidence is enough. Like somebody would believe us just because we told them that this is the evidence and this is how we did the science, and they can check us, they can check our work. But how do you translate that to maybe policy? And was that a big challenge for you going from academia to policy when sometimes evidence is not enough?
I'll jump in, on the question about the challenges of my career, and I'll say that unfortunately some of those challenges still exist for the next generation, and that was actually echoed yesterday. I was at the State of the Science presentation by Marcia McNutt at the National Academy of Sciences in DC. Hannah, you were there. It was nice to see you there. And one of the messages I heard was that particularly striking was that scientists who choose to do this type of work, the civic engagement, the science communication, and the acting as ambassadors, are not incentivized. They're really, in some cases, it can have a negative impact on their careers, especially if they're doing it in the earliest years of their careers when they're establishing themselves as researchers. And we have to find a way to tap into that wisdom and that knowledge of the next generation of scientists and incentivize it, encourage it with training, of course, and so that we know that they're doing it in the most effective way. But I think my experience was that my PI, my research lab director, was not supportive of my efforts to do science policy and to go down to the Texas State Board of Education and provide testimony. And I think that we have to do some work there. But what was exciting is that I would say when I started science communication, there was not a lot of conversation about the role that scientists had to play in this area. And yesterday, the entire presentation was about public outreach of scientists. And so I feel like maybe the little seeds that we planted 10, 15 years ago have taken root and are flourishing today. And I think similar efforts are underway for diversity, and we're starting to see the seeds of the efforts in diversity to spring true today. So there's lots of hope out there. Change can come.
Let me just say that there's certainly a lot of research. I mean, there's so many aspects of this that we could be talking about that would touch on the question you ask. There really is, I think, a better day today than there was some decades ago about whether you can do this without harming your career. I do think every scientist has a responsibility to communicate the importance of verifiable evidence. Every person has a responsibility to recognize that there is a public aspect to what they do, however tightly tied it is to the lab bench or the computer or the telescope. And so I hope you do that. But what I wanted to say about, with all we learn about the communication of science and attitudes towards science, trust of science, one of the most important things I learned was, I don't know, a minister made this as sort of a side comment to me. He said, you have to realize that, like communicating a cold or another disease, you do the most when you don't know you're doing it. You teach the most when you don't know you're teaching. You teach the most when you model the behavior that you want. Jamie spoke about this. And so that's, that's what you as ambassadors can do most of all. All of these other things are important, and we could talk at length about the details. I do hope each of you will try to figure out why others don't have the passion to know that scientists have, and therefore don't have the reverence for evidence. This reverence for evidence that Americans used to have, I would say, for a couple hundred years, seems to be slipping. We mustn't let that happen. And I don't know anybody who quite knows the answer. So you can work on that, and I expect, results from you. And you can figure out how to convince people that we should be seeking a shared understanding of reality. The whole point of science is we develop an understanding of how things are. And that is, the contrary of that is everybody having their own sense of reality. And we got to get beyond that.
And one way I so appreciate you're doing that is just really leaning into the getting out of our bubbles and the people that we're normally talking to, and really aiming to do some deep listening and understanding, to then try to find those bridges to take us forward, because science has so much to offer us. And I am so pleased. I would have loved to have conversations with each of you to hear more about your challenges and the kind of scaffolding that we can dream of together and perhaps create together. But want to just thank you, Hannah. I know you're out of time, but just thank you for the opportunity to be part of this.
Absolutely. Thank you so much to our panelists. I'm sorry we couldn't get to folks' questions, but I put my email in the chat, and please, if you have additional questions, we're happy to run them by our panelists and get back to you with their feedback. But thank you so much, everyone. A big round of applause for our panelists. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us all today. We will have the recording of this posted to our YouTube channel within the next few days. I have an event right after this, so I can't post it immediately, but we will make sure that if folks want to come back to it, or if you want to share it with your friends, that there is the option to do so. So thank you so much for joining us, and please have a great rest of your morning, your afternoon, your evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are, and keep an eye out for future events that'll be coming down the pipeline. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Peace.
Thanks for doing this.